Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on this call. I'm excited for this call. I've been anticipating just with a lot of conversations I've had over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of different feelings, emotions, mostly good, but a lot of bad out there as well. And how do we handle all this stuff? So today I have Kim Perone, a success and resilience coach with Center 4Cs. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you for coming on board. And I know we have Willie Miranda is here as well. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, we usually do these meetings with Miranda Real Estate Group and our team, but I wanted to open it up to not only our group, but also family, friends, business associates that are out there to talk about what's going on right now. I mean, there's been so much emotion with, when this first pandemic first hit, it was kind of like, is it really true? Not true. And then all of a sudden it became real, really quick, and everything got shut down, and all these emotions played out where we went from just being frozen to jumping into a fear, and then from there, anger and all the other stuff that we see now going on TV. I mean, I was just watching with my wife the other night, Walmart, all these fights going on, and people fighting over toilet paper and hitting each other with wine bottles and taking shopping carts and throwing them through people's windshields. I mean, it's going crazy, right? The world's going nuts. So, but part of it, I'm seeing a lot of information out there with mental health and all the different things with people, like, you just don't know, like all these everyone's coping with it differently. So I wanted to bring on Kim today on this call because she did a great job. Our theme this year, ironically, was work-life balance, which that kind of got thrown out the window for a little bit. But we're refocusing, Kim, and going back to some of the strategies that you shared with us at our kickoff meeting. But I wanted Kim to really talk about how do we deal with this? How do we move forward, not only in our personal lives, right, and making sure that we're homeschooling now and taking care of the kids, and
Sure.
I'm not, but I know a lot of our agents are, and a lot of friends and family are, but that's a whole different world, right? And emotions are set off, and spouses and divorce rates are going. I mean, it's just getting nuts. So we'll talk a little about that, Kim. I know you're definitely dealing with that with other corporate clients as well, and other clients that you have. But Brian, anything you want to add to that? Because I know you and I talk on a regular basis, and we're seeing a lot of stuff out there as well.
Yeah, I think there's really two sides of it too. It's like what's going on right now with people being quarantined and all that, what that looks like mentally to people. But then also there's this, or you're going to see this shift. I'm already seeing on some of these calls that people are anxious to get back to some type of normal life, but then they're scared about going back to the office, right? What am I going to be exposed to when I go back to? And it's different for different generations, right? You have the older people, believe it or not, some older people are like, I made it through worse than this, right? I think about Mr. Savini will on there, right? I'm going to Lowe's, I don't care. And then you have some of their kids that are generally nervous for them, right? It's like, listen, if I'm quarantined to keep you safe, right? Why am I being in quarantine here? It's not going to affect me as much as it's going to affect you. So there's different fears at different levels as people get back into closer to going back to norm as they can on there. So I'd like to see that addressed too.
Well, good. Well, I'm going to give over the controls to Kim, let her do her presentation here to help us out. But in the meantime, there is a question panel here to the right, or on your control panel. You see that you can actually type in a question. We'll go ahead and answer those questions at the end. So if you could just go ahead and post them up, we'll definitely leave some time at the end to have Kim go over that. So Kim, thank you so much for coming on, and excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay, great. I'd love to take it from here. And then again, yes, if you're thinking of questions, please do type in the question and we'll answer it at the end. I'm happy to do that and make it even more useful for you. I am a success and resilience coach, and I have met a number of you at the January talk, but for anyone who I haven't met yet, I am a coach after a 20-year career in communication, and it's largely in part to some tragedies in my life. So I had lost my son Jack in a car accident. He was 9, and that was 15 years ago. And so that was very tragic. And so blessedly, my younger son survived, and he was 7. And so I had this blessing and this tragedy right before me, and I had to figure out how I was going to be resilient. And it's not that I knew what that's what I really need to do resilient. I just knew that I needed to give my surviving son, Stephen, a happy life, and yet grieve the loss of our son, Jack. We have done that. He is 23, so I'm not homeschooling Stephen, which is great. He has his own apartment. So I know everyone's dealing with different levels of busyness, right? Is our stress coming from having too much overflowing, trying to help the kids with school and do your work? Is it that it's too quiet and we're out of our normal routine? It's all stressful. There's a grading underlying stress to this pandemic, to what everyone's experiencing right now. And so resilience is a perfect thing that we can learn. We can build the skill of resilience. I spent the better part of my adult life learning resilience. I love to teach resilience. It's one of the major things I love to teach as a coach to clients. And I always say, if someone has everything crashing down on them, it's time for a crash course in resilience. And so I want to talk to that person when they have had the perfect storm of events hitting them on all sides. You know, my story went forward. We were trying to rebuild our life, and then I was reorganized from a job I loved, and the people that I worked with were so near and dear to my heart because they helped me survive my tragedy. They were part of my resilience. And so then now I was ousted from that nest in a reorganization. So that was a different kind of loss that required resilience. And then when I got into the new job, my sister was diagnosed with cancer after she had her first baby. So we spent the next 11 months helping her with her cancer, and we eventually lost her to cancer. And then there was a baby nephew, and then my son was in middle school at that point, and they were in 2 different states. So it caused me, the reason why I tell you that is I was continually needing to update that story, update my resilience. Now what? Now what? Now what? Because the ground just kept moving under my feet. And right now that's what's happening. You know, there's this, okay, this is what's happened. It's exactly what Willie just said. Okay, we had this, then things went shut down very quickly, but we're gonna go back to some normal, but it's not normal. We're all realizing there's a new normal. It's gonna go on for some time. And the new normal going on for some time, we're going to need to keep digging into our reserves. We're going to need to keep creating an empowering story for how we're going to get through, how we're going to best get through. So with resilience, and I'm sharing my screen, but if you're listening to me and you're not seeing it, don't worry, you can just listen to what I'm saying, and I have a handout and Willie has it and he can share it with anyone. Or you can email me and later and I can share it with you. But it's just a 1 page, it's not a PowerPoint, it is a PowerPoint, but just 1 page. And I like to organize it in terms of benefits, key aspects, and then some of the heroes, because they can help me demonstrate a little bit of superior levels of resilience, and some of the authors and speakers and experts really who teach us about resilience and how we can go about being as strong and empowered as we can, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what. So of course, a pandemic just gives us a great backdrop to work with. And I will certainly tie it in here. And then at the end, I have a mini meditation for resilience. So what is resilience? Resilience is building a new path forward. It's a new path forward, a new normal. Now that's become a new term. That's a new normal term, is new normal. And we're going to find a new path forward after setback, loss, or tragedy. So something has occurred and it's not the way we wanted it. It's not what works best for us. And I know for realtors, it is certainly not what works best. You're outgoing people. You're used to being out and about in town. You're used to being with your clients and getting that energy from people. And I know now I've converted to all virtual, and boy, you don't get the same level of energy from not being in the same proximity with people. So I know some of you out there are nodding your heads right now, because if you're feeling a lot of fatigue, it's real. Like, we're not sharing energy the way we're normally used to doing that. And by being close to people, by being connected to people. And I found that particularly obvious in my life, being with clients this way, on video conference, but not in the same room with them. And so, just a quick note on keeping your resilience high, you also need self-compassion. So you need to rest when you need to rest. This is part of the new normal. It is exhausting, and there is a lot of stress. So that takes me right to the benefits on the left-hand side of the sheet, if you're seeing that. One of the benefits of building your resilience is it will reduce your stress, because you're going to be accepting what is and moving into a new normal. And then also moving into accepting that that's going to keep changing. There will be elements that will continue to change, and that's certainly okay. So by building a resilience, building an empowering story on how you're going to go about things, how you're going to even flow with the changes, it will reduce your stress, because you will be resisting less and you will be in the flow of your new normal. Resilience helps us make better choices, because we're not in that stressed fight or flight mode when we get truly panicked, which it's completely normal if you've been on a little bit of a roller coaster of that over the last few weeks. That's certainly fine and certainly normal. But when we are in fight or flight, when we are in true panic mode, we're not in the right part of our brain to reason well. So if you ever do find yourself, which is a normal place to be, just take a few deep breaths, because it will activate the relaxation response. And then that physical, biological relaxation response will keep you in your higher functioning brain. And that's where you want to be, right? You want to be making decisions from your higher functioning brain, not your cave brain, right? We all have this primal part of our brain. So role modeling. So everyone has family members, even if you're distanced from them, but people are watching you and how you navigate through these changes. So we have a great chance of building resilience and being a role model that demonstrates to others that they too can get through it. And I know that there are people out there listening that have been role models for other difficult challenges for others. Improved ability to have hope and a vision for the future. That's definitely what we get from resilience. Equanimity is a word, and it's one of the benefits. It's not an everyday word. So I love it, and I want to share it, because I would love for more people to know what this word means. But equanimity is holding pain and joy in the same space. And I think that's what we're doing every day, right? We're empathizing with our own pain, but other people having greater pain than maybe we have right now, someone who's suffering worse. But yet we are, I hope, tapping into some of the joy of maybe being with the family in your own home, or just the gratitude that you feel that you are safe at the moment, that you are safe, the things you have. Maybe it is gratitude for your own home. And gratitude that maybe a spouse is working right now, anything like that. We can hold joy and pain in the same space in equanimity. And actually, the interesting thing, in some translations, it's really not something we have a good word for in our Western culture. It's more of an Eastern philosophy, equanimity, and it had been mistranslated as indifference. It's not indifference, like not feeling, but it's understanding that life is suffering and life is joy, and that we have both in our life. It's not a failure to have pain in your life. It is part of life. So equanimity, just reminding yourself that you have this ability to hold these things, and not to hold yourself back from joy, because there's this pandemic going on too. Something brings you joy, if something makes you laugh, binge watching something, eating ice cream with sprinkles, like, that's good. I want you to connect with that joy, or even playing a board game with family members you're sheltered in with. I want you to feel that joy. We need to connect with that joy. If you picked up a hobby you didn't have time for it before, definitely you want to have the joy balancing the pain. And then greater compassion too. So the better and more resilient we are, And the better we own our own story and our own path forward, the better we can have compassion for ourselves and others, and move forward with grace. If you think about that, instead of resisting and feeling awful, we are moving forward with more grace and acceptance. So with that, I'll move to the key aspects. So I'm going to describe them. Like I said, if you don't have the sheet, that's fine. But perspective is the first one. So our brain is always creating a story about what's happening. And the reason why I say story when it feels like facts is the best your brain can do is take in what it's perceiving, and it does have to put some story around it. What does this mean for you? And that's what everyone in the world has been doing. What does this mean for us? So we want to make sure when we're building our resilience skills that we have the empowering story, not the disempowering story. So very simply put, is it a victor story or is it a victim story? And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel our pain. We can feel our discomfort, our setback, even our financial loss. We can feel our fear. We can say, you know, what do I need right now? I need to stay calm. I need to believe that things will be better in the future. And that is a more empowering story. If you believe things are just going to go downhill for you, and that it's just going to get worse, and that there's no way back, and it won't be the same, and that feels horrible, that's a disempowering story. If your story, what your brain is taking in of everything going around is, this is serious, people need to take it seriously, but I'm grateful for this, this, and this. And yes, it causes me fear, but I know that I can handle anything that I have to handle, and that I'm a human being with a great deal of creativity, and that humans are super adapters. So people will still want to buy homes, buy things. We'll get more and more creative on how we need to do this, that the economy will come back. You see that that's a much more empowering story. And so some of you that are listening to this right now, you have that story. You have an empowered story. So you're already resilient. You're already resilient to say, my perspective is things are tough, but we're going to move forward and things will get better. Disempowering story is, this is the beginning of the end, right? And everything's going to crash and fall apart and it's going to be awful. So as simple as that. And the interesting thing on perspective, so I have this little thing that I will demonstrate with my hand if you're watching me and not just listening to me, is that if you were to put your finger in the air and go circle clockwise, right? And you're looking up at it and you're circling clockwise, and you bring your finger down, and then you look down at your finger, but it's still going in the same direction it was when it was above you, but you look down, your finger is now going counterclockwise, right? It was the angle with which you were looking at your finger, right? So this might even be a good demonstration for your children if they're home from school. It's like, perspective matters, right? From one perspective, my finger was going clockwise. From another perspective, my finger was going counterclockwise, and my finger did not change direction. Although I did have my mother do that exercise, and she went, wow, it's going back and forth in a straight line now. I go, that must be another test, because that's not what I intended to show you. But she's a hoot. So really thinking about the perspective is a big, big foundation in resilience. The next is adaptation. Humans are super adapters. Just think of where we've come in the world. I mean, we're using video conference, right? So think about 50, 60 years ago, the thought that all seems so space age, right? That video, there were predictions that you be calling people on video, and people laughed at that, right? Human beings are super adaptive, and you are too. And I know that even you are as an industry. So virtual tours Or, of course, there's a lot of people right now thinking maybe their house is a little too small for the whole family to be sheltered in. So absolutely, people will be adapting. Somebody's out there thinking right now, man, I wish we had a pool to open this summer if we're all going to be home all summer together. So to really know that the more you adapt rather than resist change is the more resilient you are. Grief. We grieve when we lose people and people in our life pass away. And I certainly have spent a lot of time dealing with grief and learning about grief. But there's grief in losses of things. And it could be a job, as I said, reorganization was a loss for me. But really, the loss of our sense of safety right now is a grief we're all experiencing. And I don't know if any of you have seen the articles, but there have been articles on that say we're all grieving right now. We're grieving our sense of safety. We're grieving our old normal. We're grieving that we're distanced from people, even when we see them and we're staying far away. I don't know if any of you noticed, but when you do go to the grocery store, the first time I stopped during this pandemic and you have the mask on, it's almost like I found myself not making eye contact. Like it was fearful to be in the grocery store. There was this fear, people were jumpy and not looking at each other. And it was just a human reaction to the different world that we were in. But it is a grief. We are getting used to it. So we're not getting over the fact that now our lives have changed, but we can start to adapt. We can start to be resilient and not have it hurt us as much, right? That felt really awful as we continue to go forward and some things open up, but then there's also offices that'll be different, or not getting together with your friends in the lunchroom, or the lunches that you might have out in coffees with people, or even the way you might show homes if you're in real estate might change. When it comes to grief too, there's anticipatory grief. And what that is waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's the grief that you're anticipating. What's next? What will I lose next? Who might I lose next? So to understand that that's happening during your normal life and how you're trying to live and be grateful and be happy and stay in the moment, that is happening. And grief, the stages of grief are denial, bargaining, anger, depression or sadness, and acceptance. And it's not linear. It's not like one to the next. I mean, it can be one to the next, but if think about it as being more circular. So we're kind of floating around those feelings as we grieve. And then we're not getting over, we're just incorporating it into our life, right? So that's what you're doing right now. You're weaving this new normal into your life. And when I mentioned those elements, denial, bargaining, anger, sadness and depression, acceptance, you can see, this is what Willie and Brian had mentioned at the beginning, anger. We're seeing all of those things happen in interactions with people right now, right? This is grief. It really is. And we will begin to weave it into the fabric of what our new normal is and find ways to be more resilient and not have it hurt us as much as it has in these initial, say, 6-7 weeks. Introspection. We can take anything as an opportunity to look inward. And one thing that I've been saying quite a bit these days is when you cannot freely travel your town, your state, your country, your world, we can take the time for the inner journey. So any level of discomfort we feel, or it could be not discomfort too, any joy, something strikes you as funny, you may be laughing 10 times harder now because so much has been taken away, so much has been uncertain, there's been a cloud. So really, actually, when the weather gets nice, I think we'll all, it'll be like a balloon popping up when the weather is truly warmer and sunnier. we will all just feel so much better. But we can really take something, if you get really upset, you find yourself in a low point, a coaching exercise is to ask yourself, whew, what's going on for me right now? What am I feeling? And what do I need? And then give it to yourself, answer the question. You might be overtired because of all that you've been trying to do, juggling family at home. You might be sad. You might need a break. So really get introspective. If you're starting to feel uncomfortable and upset, you might also find when you ask yourself that question, I'm thinking too far down the road. Because sometimes when things are uncertain and we try and think too far down the road, that's just fiction. And what kind of fiction are we creating? When we feel really awful, the fiction of the future that we're creating is one that's bleak and dark and coming with more problems. So you can also trace how you feel back to what your most recent thoughts were. So you can always use that as a coaching exercise during these challenging times. And then that goes into emotions. So the next thing on the sheet is emotions, emotional intelligence. Our ability to regulate our emotions, to know what's going on for us, to be able to recognize our emotions instead of being at Walmart wanting to punch somebody out, which none of you are, I'm sure, but we're seeing that anger that people are feeling. It's because they're not regulating their emotions. They're just feeling it, and in that moment, it's coming out like a volcano. It's the tea kettle effect. They've been feeling bad, but they've been squashing it down or really unconscious about it, and they're scared, and it's coming out. So emotional intelligence, like regular intelligence, sometimes called EQ versus IQ, is understanding your own emotions so that you're not just reacting on them. Like with our family members too. I found myself snap at my husband a couple times, and I thought, oh, that was really all about me. That was all me feeling frustrated and working 24/7 in the home. So we also can have emotional intelligence is knowing when you're seeing that on the part of someone else that you might be near. So resilience can also be supported. A key aspect is when you understand more of what's happening emotionally with someone else. You can see it, but you also know what's going on with you. Transcendence is the next key aspect of resilience. Our minds are so powerful, and we have amazing examples of this, but our minds are so powerful that we can transcend our situation, and people do it every day. They're everyday heroes on that. Transcend in our minds our circumstance. So one of my heroes is Viktor Frankl, and he's a great example. He's a Nazi concentration camp survivor. He has since passed, but he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a psychologist, and he, as an adult, went into the concentration camp and was separated from his pregnant wife and his parents. And because he was a psychologist, he was really watching and studying what was happening in the concentration camp. And when he did that, he transcended his circumstance. He actually imagined himself teaching a class after getting out. So he went into the future in a positive way. When I get out, I could teach a class on the psychology of what's going on in the concentration camp right now. And he also saw that all things being equal, when people lost hope, they passed away. So if there was a rumor that they would be released on April 5th, when April 6th came, people would pass away because they were all starving and they were all on the edge of life, but hope was often the difference. So one of his famous quotes is, "The last of our human freedoms is our ability to choose our attitude." And it's so true. Like, no one can take that away from you. Now, you might have a cranky relative that calls you a Pollyanna, or calls you Miss Sunshine, or in denial, but really, you get to choose your attitude. And we can transcend our circumstance in our minds. Another hero, very similar from the Rwandan Holocaust, is Immaculate Ilibagiza. Sorry, I always trip over her last name. But I read a book soon after losing my son, and it just helped me connect with suffering in a broader way in the world. She was a Rwandan Holocaust survivor that was hidden. She was a young adult, and she was hidden in a pastor's second bathroom, and they put an armoire in front of it, and she was not alone. So they crammed, like, 6 women were in this place, and they were getting very little, as much as the pastor could give them to eat without causing any suspicion. And she was in there for 3 months, and in there, these women who were hidden in there, all they had was their mind to be thinking all day long in all this time. And so really, those are examples where people have survived tremendous odds, and then to come out and find purpose and meaning, and purpose is on the list of things I'll talk about, but to come out similar to Viktor Frankl and write a book called Left to Tell about what happened, and then also become a UN ambassador and come to the US. So if people can survive these unbelievable situations, I know this is an unbelievable situation that we're going through, but we know we have the ability. You have the ability. These people aren't different than you. I liked to connect with people who transcended in their mind to help me survive what I thought was going to cripple me in terms of loss. But over the years, I realized that I looked to them to say, okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I didn't realize that some people look at people who survive amazing things and go, wow, they're so brave. Like, I'm not like that person. And so one added element I want to share with everyone is to look at the heroes, look at people who have accomplished major things and atrocities, or even health problems with with a wonderful new perspective, and say, they're like me, they are like you. It's not that they were different and that's why they could handle it and you're struggling with it. It's really in your human capability to do that. And of course, personal growth happens from discomfort. Personal growth doesn't necessarily happen in good times. It can, but most often it's in the toughest times and the darkest times. And it's a perfect analogy is like the seed being planted. So in some of our most fearful moments, we can really use this pandemic time to say, well, we're all seeds being planted, right? We're in a darker time. It's uncertain. We don't know what's happening, but really, what's going to bloom from this? And there's so many things that might potentially bloom that are very positive. So many things that could be positive to move our industries forward, to move people individually. There's some people at home right now realizing they may like working from home. So there may be some people that might be making changes when we can come out of this, or people are sharing compassion with each other and thinking about others maybe in new and different ways. So personal growth is something that you can hang on to as you build your resilience. If it starts to feel dark and bad, just remember you're the seed being planted, and here's an opportunity to grow. And sometimes we can always also kind of say that in a funny way, like, well, I'm growing, when you're angry or frustrated, we're growing, we're growing as a family, maybe snipping and sniping at each other, or having fun playing board games, right? And community, I definitely think there's this united experience happening. And so it's interesting. What are we seeing on the news? The polarization, people losing it. Some people actually saying, I was on a video conference and a couple of people are like, I'm losing it. I haven't been around people. My business is down. I'm losing it. And if you feel like you're losing it, you are not alone. In fact, in any setback, so the cancer diagnosis, the loss of someone you love, the pandemic, and having financial troubles, the market being down, you're in among community that are dealing with the same thing. right? So that can be empowering and resilient, but it can be disempowering if, let's say, you were unemployed and you feel like, well, now, how am I ever going to get a job, right? Because now I'm competing with everybody. Everybody's unemployed, right? So that would be the disempowering story, and less resilient is like connecting with the fact that you're not alone and that you're experiencing things. You're in a community of people who can relate. In purpose, finding purpose and meaning is a way to be resilient. And so we see this on a normal everyday day. We see this among so many cancer survivors, cancer thrivers, right? They have maybe even a deeper relationship with life. People start living in a different way. Maybe the things that used to stress them out before don't stress them anymore. Their health becomes more important. And maybe that's more of their purpose. It becomes more front and center when it's really important to take care of their health. So perspective, adaptation, grief, emotions, our emotional intelligence, transcendence, personal growth, community, and purpose. These are key aspects of resilience. So as time goes by, and I'll move to the heroes that I have for just more resources if you would be looking for more information to help build your resilience. But really, you can use those key aspects as a lens to help you build resilience during this time, to help you navigate your new normal with grace and equanimity. Right? So the heroes I want to highlight before our time is up and before we get to questions is, I call them heroes because they gave me so much personal support by reading their books and studying their material as I became a coach, but even before, into dealing with the loss of life as I knew it, and trying to rebuild and still have a joyful life for my surviving son. So Rick Hansen does a lot with brain training, and the brain does have a negativity bias. And so I think that's really important for us to know. And I shared that in my talk in January. The brain has a negativity bias. So we know that our brain is our problem solver. And something like a pandemic is not a problem that got solved overnight. It's going to take a while, and it's going to be in pieces. So your brain might want to focus on that problem all the time because it says that's the problem and that's what I do. And so you will have to pull your brain to a more empowering place. And so for you to know that it's normal to have to pull your brain out of the problem, but you do deserve to have a break from that problem. Like, don't let your mind just swill in that all the time. Do connect with your joy. Do connect with your gratitude. Do connect with everything's going to be okay, which is more of the soul speaking than the brain speaking. Wayne Dyer, Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle, they're all authors that talk a lot about that ego and the brain and how it causes anxiety. The thinker in your head causes a lot of anxiety and negative thinking. And we aren't that voice. That voice in our head is a part of us. It's not all of us. So that's where that can be crippling. So the ability to pull away from your thoughts, the ability to connect with your essence and your being is really important for resilience. So I highly recommend them as authors. Brene Brown, she is a sort of a modern speaker and author on the topic. She has a new podcast out, and people are loving it during this time. She's been on the Today Show recently. And it's basically about being vulnerable, which people don't like to be. So she's a researcher, and her research showed her that on the other side of vulnerability is everything you want to live a wholehearted life, right? But how comfortable are we with vulnerability? We're not at all comfortable with that. We're trying to hold on, we're trying to control, we're trying not to be vulnerable. And so living our best life involves getting really honest about that and being vulnerable. And this is a great time to practice that because we're all vulnerable right now, very vulnerable in our careers, our portfolios, savings accounts, in our even our sanity, not being around people. For those extroverts out there, it's excruciating. Daniel Goleman, he is the person who coined the emotional intelligence. So he's an author on a lot of that emotional intelligence, if someone's interested in learning more about that during this time. Joseph Campbell, he is the late American mythologist, and he is amazing. So he saw that there was a common storyline among all myths in all cultures, and he called it the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is, there's that main character in the story, and he or she sets off on a path, maybe reluctantly. Something happened, and now they're out on a path, and there's no turning back. And they're met with helpers and guidance. And then at some point, there's a death of the old self, because now things have changed. And there's the birth of the new self. And then there is the returning back home, right? They set out on a journey. They met with the help. They've learned something new. There was no going back. And then they return home. And this is a template that is still used to this day by screenwriters to write movies. So almost all the movies that we watch, I might actually venture to say all, have this storyline. It's a framework, and it's a universal component of what we resonate with as human beings. So if you overlay Carl Jung's psychology on top of that, you are the hero in the story of your own life. And back to equanimity, your life and that hero, you, is not going to just have an easy breezy life. And that's not the goal of life. You will be met with challenges. You are on your own hero's journey. There's a certain point that it's been a defining moment for you. It could be now. It could have happened already. There was this crossing some threshold of before and after. For anyone who's dealt with a cancer diagnosis, there's a before and after, because you'll always be thinking of that in your health in a new and different way. Or someone who's diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, or someone whose industry is going to take a lot, which I don't think is real estate, but right now with the pandemic, there could be a definitive mark for somebody. And maybe it's even our healthcare professionals, where it's pushing them so deep into being on the front lines, as we call it. So they may be, this is their hero's journey. All of a sudden, they just went front and center in ways that no one would have predicted. So I talked about Viktor Frankl and Immaculate. Again, they really transcended in their minds to just help them get through an extended period of suffering. And that's why I really resonate with that when it comes to resilience. And a note on our spiritual traditions, all of the spiritual traditions, the common thread is compassion. And really for us all to be sharing it now, when I see all the good of people helping each other right now, our spiritual traditions, positive psychology has come out of what is the most common elements of our spiritual traditions. And really, if you think about it, faith, right? We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now that we know is uncertainty, but really before we were living with a lot of uncertainty, but we thought we had more certainty, right? So faith is all about believing what you're not seeing. And so may that help guide you during these days and months and year, even if it's that. We will keep moving forward. And the one thing that I realized as we come to a bit of a close here is that every movement forward counts. And sometimes we're taking steps backwards. But to build your resilience, to feel resilient, is to understand that it's not 0 to 60. It may be small steps, but to champion those small steps, every bit forward counts. If you're homeschooling your kids right now, that step forward, or every day forward, you're getting through it. And I want you to celebrate the little successes. It's really important that we do that. We need to be exceptionally good to ourselves. So be compassionate to yourselves. These are unprecedented times, as everyone keeps saying. So I wish you well. And I want to end with just a mini meditation. It's called a hand on the heart practice. And I'm just going to walk you through it. It's just a couple of minutes. So if you want to just get comfortable in your seat, And you might even just put your eyes down or closed and just start focusing on your breathing. It's just comfortable inhale, exhale. And I want you to place your hands over your heart. And I want you to make sure that you can feel the warmth of your hands right on your chest over your heart. And I want you to breathe a little more slowly, a little more gently, a little more deeply into your heart space. And I want you to recall a moment when you felt safe, and loved, and cherished by another human being. Not the entire relationship, just a moment. Connect to a moment that you felt really comfortable. It could be with a spouse or a parent, a child, a friend, even a beloved pet. And I want you to let the warmth of that moment wash through your body as you remember and connect that moment of feeling safe and loved and comfortable. When you are ready, just come back to the room. You can remove your hands. And you can notice and reflect on any shifts that you might have felt in your body. Maybe there was a little release of tension, or the warmth of your hands had a calming effect. This is a self-compassion exercise, a resilient exercise you can do for yourself anytime. Remember what I said about basically keeping ourselves out of fight or flight, keeping ourselves out of the panic mode. You know, we might be doing that 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a day, but really taking a few moments to pause and connect with a good feeling and connect with yourself is very, very useful in these stressful times. So I thank you so much. And at this point, I will open it up to questions if Willie has any.
Yes, we have a few. Kim, thank you so much. That was great. And took a couple pages of notes here, and good stuff. Brian's doing his exercises there in his home. So we'll jump into questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the question box on here. But a lot of comments. I got a few texts too that came through. They really needed to hear this message today, Kim. So thank you.
Oh, I thank you.
So one we have on air says, how do I help my young children understand why they can't be with their friends right now, or they can't hug family members, etc.?
Question.
Yeah, that is really hard. And I know that it's like so needs to be so age appropriate, right? So it depends on the message. But if we think about children and more of their innocence and in our fear as adults. So one of a mindful aspect is in the expert mind, the opportunities are few. In the beginner mind, the opportunities are plentiful, right? So a mindful quality is actually that level of innocence, like young beginner's mind. So first, I want you to realize that they are very open. They're very mindful. They're very open, and they have an innocence and less fear. You know, they'll be picking up the fear if they see a lot of fearful people around them. So I think that they would probably just resonate with the safety, like the safety aspect of this is a time period where we're trying not to get each other sick, and that eventually that won't be as big of an issue. So we're going to do what we need to now to keep people safe. And I think that is a more child oriented. I think children innocently want to do what's best for others. And then the second part of that though too is to acknowledge, like, if they're sad about it, and of course that rips our heart out as parents, but if they're sad, that's okay. You can encourage them to feel their feelings. You can even share with them that you feel that way too. Like, I know this is hard for all of us. And that level of compassion and understanding will go a long way. A long way.
Awesome. A great answer. And I've heard that come up a few times.
Mhm.
Kids at home, husband, homeschooling, meals, cleaning, work still needs to be done, still working remotely. Any
Yeah.
advice on time management tips?
Oh, absolutely. So it's almost like in that situation, you have a whole new type of calendar, right? And the first thing is to understand you're doing the best you can, right? So these are unprecedented times. The self-compassion that comes from you're doing the best you can to keep all those things moving forward in the same space, right? So to just recognize that you're probably doing better at all that than you think you might be, than it feels, because it's been chaotic. But the second piece is, I think there's an opportunity as we move forward, and this goes on a bit, is that a new type of calendar, a new situations, new time management. Like the way you did things before, moved inside the home altogether, is going to be a little different. And now you might find that ways that you separate the rooms, the times of the day that you do things might have to change because you're all in the same space. And then giving each other space. Like if somebody's on a conference call with a client, right? You're like, shush, no, I'm not going to let the dog out right now. No, I'm not going to answer all your questions right now. And so, like, there may be new guidelines and new communication that you do with your family.
That's great. I've heard that from a couple people, and they put the same schedule because the kids are used to that routine. So if they had math or they had spelling or different things that they actually put it in the calendar for the day and structure it. So because kids want structure as well. So I think
Yeah,
exactly what
you
you said is
do.
great. Also, best ways to engage and keep teenagers encouraged.
Oh, there. I feel so deeply for the teens because that's a time in your life you really just want to be with your friends. And especially if they're seniors, oh my goodness, there's so many social things not happening for juniors or seniors. And I definitely think this is where you might take some of the resilience and share, because the teenagers are really young adults in a way. And the, it's okay for them to learn some hardship, right? And so as much as it rips your heart out and they may be frustrated, so actually you're probably going to have to be calm when they're angry or when they have an emotional outburst, right? The more calm you can be, that's okay. They're just blowing off steam. But to really help them, that this is them building resilience, and that the goal of life is not, again, we want to enjoy life, we want to achieve, we want to do things like normal, but if we can't, we need to rise to the challenge, and we can rise to the challenge. When things get taken away, well, there's other things we can put our attention on. And so it could be, an empowering time for them as well if they learn some of these resilience techniques.
Well, I think too, having it that it's not going to be forever too, right? Let them know that this
Yeah.
is time that you have to just dig deep and we'll get through it.
Yeah, and then you'll always remember it too. It will be the most memorable thing for many people, and that's okay. But there will be a time when we'll be laughing about remember when and how hard that was.
Brian, you're going through that with Matt, right now. I know a lot of
Yeah,
people on
just
the fellowship.
you hit kind of on a personal note there, just that sense of loss, right? He was a athlete. He likes track, so he doesn't have a track season this year. He's not going to have senior prom. Graduation is in question, how that's going to handle. So that whole class of 2020, I see it's not just in my household, but in households all over the place there. That's something that they won't get back, a normal pattern that all of us have went through, right? We all had normal graduations and normal senior years. This class will never have that on there. So I was just trying to figure out ways to address that because it does impact them. They're now seeing it. Early on they were like, "Oh, we're going to go back to school." Now it's like, gee, this is real. I'm never going to have this, Then they're talking about, doing things virtually. Nobody wants that virtually. I know we talked to some of our agents, some other people on the call too, experiencing similar things. So thank you for sharing some of this, because it does put into perspective, right, how they're seeing things versus how we see it.
They are grieving the loss of those things, to your point. It's never coming back. The senior year of high school is never coming back. That prom, that event is not coming back. The interesting thing though is, as a parent, to help them, like, there's a time to be grieving that, and then there's a time to be shifting to what is working. And that will make them feel better. Like, there's a time to grieve that, but then we can't let our brain spend too much time with everything that's not working. And again, the brain, being a problem solver, wants to stay there, but you do want to be shifting to the things that are working. Like, we have technology today that allows us to at least see each other and communicate, and also the amazing things that they have that will happen in their life in the future. This is temporary. Some things will never come back, but they will have a lot of happy, fun moments in their life going forward.
All right, great answer. Okay, we have one here. This is great information, Kim, and certainly validates the roller coaster that many of us felt we're on with this. Do you have any suggestions for exercise or questions beyond how are you feeling that might be good to share at our dinner tables?
Like,
Instead of just coming up with, hey, how are you feeling? How are you feeling at dinner table? Like, what are some other ways to see how they
yes,
really are doing?
I like that. Yeah, how are you feeling? Right. Well, the exercise, that threw me off, because this is like my lowest point. I cannot get myself moving. And I know I have to, because it's like I've got to exercise, right? I'm just sitting too much, and I know that that's not good. So I think in the conversation. So one of the things is, when it comes to conversation or exercise, any movement counts. So it may not be as much exercise, but one of the things that I realized recently, and I wrote a short article on, is, a mindful morning routine. Okay, so you might read a passage of something, write in a journal, just short, don't put lots of pressure on yourself, stretch, move a little bit, and then maybe meditate for a minute or two. And that could be really, really simple, right? So any movement, I found, like running up and down the stairs, like, people are stuck in the house, they're probably moving around the house, and they can count that as movement. But that leads me to the dinner conversation too. It's like, get creative. So this is an opportunity to tap real deep into our creativity. And we're seeing some of it, because some of the stuff that's making us laugh, like the things people are writing about the pandemic. Like, I saw this thing with 15 days of Corona, and I don't know, like day 14, it was like, I was talking to a spider, they're a web designer. And, I don't know if anyone, but it was just so creative. And there was one where it was like all the appliances were the person's friends, and they're like, yeah, I was talking to the washing machine, but she puts her spin on everything, and the refrigerator is cold and distant, so he didn't want anything to do with me. And I just thought, that how creative, how much fun. And then I know, even in my own life, we have a trivia team that is obviously not going out to the restaurant every Wednesday night. Our members have been Zooming and creating our own trivia categories. And creating my own trivia categories has brought me so much joy. And I think that that's where dinner table conversation can come to a new level, right? You can be entertaining each other. Maybe you're engaging the comedian in the family to entertain you. And maybe it is, what are we grateful for? Maybe it is some new, we know we're feeling stuck. It's not like we're asking, what'd you do today? I saw you all day. We were together all day.
Oh, that's great. Great advice there. And Brian's our comedian in our family. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you for all the great advice. What is the best way you have found to find your peace daily?
The number one way is when you believe that you should find peace. So this is subtle, but I think this is the first step. Believing it's in your best interest to find your peace and calm, no matter what. Like, you could have just heard a horrible story. Somebody you know is going through a horrible time. You can feel bad for them, but to know that you still are entitled to peace in the situation, that it's in your best interest, that it's not doing anybody good if you don't have peace, if you're stressed out, if you're not calm. It's interesting because that almost sounds, like an obvious thing. But if you think about it, so many of us, especially people who are listening right now and watching right now, if you're an achiever, you're a doer, you execute on things, you're successful in your career, you get things done, you might not feel like you should feel good. It might feel complacent. It might feel lazy to find your peace, right? It may, and it's subtle. It's subconscious. You might feel like I need to be doing more, or I should be upset that things aren't, it's not good in the world. Shouldn't I be upset about this? So that's why I say it's subtle, but it's important. Is you have to begin by knowing that you should have peace and that your peace helps everyone. And
That's
it truly
awesome.
does. It truly does.
Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap things up. We're here at the top of the hour. Do you have a support group or best ways of coping with day-to-day stresses?
Ah, yes. I have started some free coaching groups, and it's interesting because not as many people take advantage of that as you might think. Put out free coaching groups. You're like, oh my gosh, I'd probably get tons. But I've had steady, like a couple and I do 4 weeks. So if anyone out there is listening and they're feeling like it's time for support, because I'm not like over flooded with those. I think that's it. People have been in trying to change their work life, so people have been a little overwhelmed, even if they needed it. But I do 4 weeks of mindfulness, 1 week's fear, dealing with fear. The next week it's like 45-minute sessions. The next week would be meditation, where I do teach some short meditations people can do anytime, and I take them through a couple guided meditations. The next one, mindfulness 101, and then this resilience. And so we could do that. Like, if anyone out there has a group of friends who might be feeling the same way, and you want to do a coaching group around these strange times to be supportive and to be connected, and then to also address some of the questions like we did today, just reach out to me. You can send me an email at kperone@center4c.com, and Perone is with 1 R. Kperone. I would be happy to accommodate, because it helps me. It lifts my spirits when I see more people and I see new people, and I, interact more myself. I mean, just like many of you, I used to drive around to do networking things or give presentations out in the world. And it's now just all like this. So
And I would think too, Kim, that that's something that you'd want participation on, and like Zoom type of meetings like this, so that it's almost like you're at an actual meeting, but you're doing it virtually and online.
Yeah, and I love it. It lifts my spirits too. I appreciate having that in a time when my work life is changed and different. So it brings me joy to be working with more people or answering more questions. People could just email me as well. I'm happy to talk to anybody. But yeah, and so I had put out that I'm doing things like this. And also the free coaching groups for people. I realize that people are having tough times, and I just want to be as useful as possible. And it's not just me. Like, most coaches are doing something, some level of what they're just trying to give back and help people get through. It's about sustainability. And your peace and calm, to that last question, is part of what's going to help you sustain as long as you need to.
All right. Well, awesome. Okay. Well, if anyone wanted to get a hold of you directly, I see your information here on the bottom of the screen. So they can email you, they can call you, they can go onto your website,
Yes.
and you could reach directly out to Kim, correct?
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
All right, good. So great stuff. I mean, a lot of my takeaways, I mean, perspective matters, victor versus victim, adapt versus resist, all great stuff and great things for us to move forward with as we get through this crazy time. That's my closing comments. Brian, anything in your closing comments for you?
Yeah, a lot of great stuff. I like the perspective thing, putting things in perspective. Everyone looks at things differently here. I've read Daniel Coleman's book on emotional intelligence, just being able to identify your emotions, what you're feeling, be smart enough not to overreact and take control of them, but then have empathy too for people. So great information here. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the call.
Well, thank you so much. I loved being here with you, and great to see you both, and to get all those wonderful questions too. I really appreciate it myself.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brian. And anyone that wants to get a hold of Kim, her information's down below. And I know Kim can help us out, and we'll have Kim on future calls, and we'll definitely be following up with you, Kim, on maybe doing a support group here within our company as well to help for those that need a little bit more of your guidance and help. So thank you so much. And again, have a great day. And thank you for everything that you've done for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye now.